Welcome to the most controversial Toronto Raptors podcast going. This is Free Association on the Sportsnet Podcast Network. I'm JD Bunkus, and I am joined as always by Grey Cup legend, Grey Cup media member extraordinaire, flies on a private jet, although did get a middle seat apparently. So how hot could you be? Donnovan Bennett, what's up, buddy?
I've never been on a PJ before in my life.
You've never been on one? You're not even for a second on like a tour?
No, never.
I went on Air Force One.
What?
Not to brag. I went to the Boeing Museum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's how I got on. Just like everybody else. I went on, and it was for a president that at the time I didn't know or understand any historical context. My dad was like, cool, huh? I was like, yeah, it's a fax machine on here. Amazing. That's my cool airplane story. How was Grey Cup?
It was good. It was good. Good weather. The people of Calgary, the Calgarians, were great hosts. You can't pick many better cities to host than Calgary. They love their football. It's a great city, very walkable, good weather. So, yeah, the game wasn't that great, but the Grey Cup week was outstanding.
Yeah, I love the stands of the Grey Cup when they do the wide shot and they show all the different people in all the different uniforms and how... Yeah, it's not that way with the Super Bowl, right? I know there's definitely Americana associated with the Super Bowl. Of course there is. But you don't look out in the crowds and see every single uniform from around the league all over the place and like a even split. I'm sure there were more Bombers fans in terms of representation than anybody else. Is that fair? That's what it looked like on TV.
Ticats fans were there as well. Riders fans show up wherever you are. I mean, the cool thing, the Super Bowl is different because it's corporate. You'll have the fan bases that get into the game, but a lot of the tickets are corporate tickets or contest winners. Where the Grey Cup, I mean, certainly you have a bit of that, but all Grey Cup week, it's basically people showing out for not just their team, but where they're from. And I think that's the one thing that makes it different than any other championship, makes it different to anything other than maybe the Final Four, is that all week, everyone is wearing their colors. So the Riders fans are wearing green, the Eskimos fans are wearing green and gold, and Stamps fans are wearing red, so on and so forth. And for most of the cities, the CFL cities, and Winnipeg ending the drought of 29 years, for sure it's them, it's a chance for them to say, oh, no, you're going to pay attention to us. Like, look at us. We are here. We're out here.
And look at our guy with no pants.
Look at our guy with no pants. And so for Winnipeg, for Manitoba, the entire province, it was a chance for them to say, yeah, we're the place that you fly over when you're going somewhere else.
We're the mosquito place.
What does that mean?
Winnipeg's got lots of mosquitoes.
Oh, okay.
That was my big takeaway when I was there. I'm from Whitehorse, Yukon, and they had a lot of mosquitoes there.
Well, you're the mosquito place, evidently. But no, like, for once, you're going to talk about us. Yeah. We're going to be on the front page of all the websites. We're going to lead the national. And so that part is cool, that people are, like, literally wearing their provincial or city colors and waving, their city flags. And that's why it's a cool part of Canada.
What have you not been to as a journalist? Like, what have you not covered or been to as a fan?
The World Series.
Could have happened. They're so close.
The Stanley Cup Finals.
Okay.
Those two?
Those two?
The two championships that are big for Sportsnet, basically.
I was going to say, like, the two ones that you would have picked are the most obvious that you would have been to, or the ones that you haven't been to?
No, the Final Four, I would say, is
coolest one.
Yeah.
I've never been to a Final Four. I've been to a tournament game, but it was Sweet 16, not Final Four. But man, I love the Grey Cup. I can't wait for it to come back to Hamilton, and so I can actually go to it. I only went the year it was in Toronto, but I was blown away by how fun it was. And the thing that everyone kept saying was how much better it is in all the other cities, which made me feel like we were getting the corporate, less fun version of it. Like, you probably get invited to everything. Like, what's it called? The Spirit of Edmonton party? Yeah. Like, you've been to that because you're a big timer.
I have.
Yeah, exactly.
Your media pass gets you into those things.
No, but I want to go as they're like, we want you here to throw some back. Eat some pancakes and crush some beers with us.
That's the Stampeders Pancake Breakfast.
Oh, that's their thing? What's the Spirit of Edmonton is which one then?
It's the Eskimos party. It's basically it's
God,
that
cool.
and Riderville are neck and neck for the best party at Grey Cup. Or actually, sorry, the Atlantic Schooners East Kitchen Party is also very good if you're into that type of thing.
Ooh, okay, so
now I know.
Though. Well, I was going to say, this is amazing because I actually got you into this about something other than the NBA for longer than 3 minutes. I'd love to hear the count here. Normally at the 3-minute mark, You hit it. I think we went a little past it. But yeah, you did fly back in the middle seat before we talk about basketball. And you had a good tweet. You tweeted something along the lines of, I DM'd it to myself. So I'm actually just going to read it verbatim.
I mean, I'm here. I could just tell you the
All right,
sentiments of it. Do you need to get it word for word?
I don't know. I thought word for word was good. You can say the sentiment of it then.
Quote tweet me on air.
This is Donnovan Bennett. These are his words as spoken by me. Shouldn't middle seats on airplanes be cheaper than windows and aisle seats? If it is generally understood the middle is the least desirable seat, shouldn't you have to pay a premium for the other two or get a discount for the inconvenience of being in the middle? You shouldn't have written the part about the premium for the other two seats, because if you're an airline, you're definitely not looking at that tweet like, we should charge less for one of the seats. It's like, no, we should charge more for the other seats. So do you feel responsible for screwing over people who want to just have a little bit more comfort on their flights moving forward?
No, because there's people who are like, well, only if you're flying solo. If you're a couple, you'd appreciate being together. I'm like,
whose voice is that?
The people who
do you
tweet
know someone
me
who sounds like that? Oh, that's your Twitter voice?
People who tweet me without logic.
Okay.
Well, listen, Einstein, not to break down math for you, but if you have two seats and one is a bit lower and one is a bit more expensive, it all comes out in the wash.
Yeah.
But no, it's people rushed. Oh man, I need to get an aisle. I need to get a window. There are people who, when their travel is booked by their company, if it's not their preference, they'll complain.
Sure.
Like they won't just wait to get to the counter or get to the kiosk or check in early and change it. They want it changed up front. And if people care about it that much, shouldn't we put a price on it? Like you have different. Well, first class is obviously more expensive.
No, I mean, my take on this is we already pay a premium for it. It's called booking early. This is the price you pay for being someone who takes their time and is lackadaisical with their travel plans, aka me. That's why I always sit middle.
But that's a personal cost. It's not a physical cost.
I know, but I think that is a personal and physical cost. Like they're both. Like you're sitting there, you're fighting over the armrest the entire time. You're obsessing about what kind of a jerk wouldn't give you the double armrest when you get stuck in the middle. Like that's the cost. You waited too long. You end up having to pay more because the flight is, you're waiting, and then you get the middle seat. It's the double. Like, why didn't I just Travelocity or whatever this, like 2 months ago? I knew I was going to do this trip. I kept putting it off, thinking I was going to get some better deal that never materialized. This is the tax I pay, middle seat tax.
So are you aisle or window?
I'm aisle for sure. I used to be window, but then I grew up and then I matured and I realized that, of course, having extra legroom into the aisle and just having to pay attention for the cart is important.
Because you're 7'2".
Well, I'm pretty tall. I don't know if you notice. 5'10".
I'm window all the way.
Why?
Because I can go to sleep.
You like the window open or closed?
Generally closed.
Yeah,
because I want to go to sleep.
Okay, so now you're in the power seat and you're like, it's closed, everyone. So when people want to see out the window, they're like, no, not according to Donnovan Bennett.
When we take off and we land, I'll open it. You can get your little Instagram photo of the wing and the mountains or whatever.
Do you say that before? You're like basically the person on the airplane, when they come by with the emergency seats, like, hey, everyone, this is how this is going to work out. Do I need to explain it to you? Yes, I do, because I think this is a regulation. You basically, during takeoff, you're like, I'm in the window seat. My name is Donnovan Bennett. I will be handling the window for this afternoon. On takeoff, you may take an Instagram photo. You may lean across me, take one Instagram photo. Then I'll be closing it for the flight. But upon arrival, I will also open the window once again for you to take a look out and see the city skyline.
No,
those are the rules.
I don't say that at all. I will say, though, that the exit row, the emergency aisle, if you will, unless you're really tall, it's kind of overrated. Because you have that added responsibility.
Disagree.
But also, no, let's break it down.
Yeah.
Your tray is in order distance away from you. So eating is awkward. If you work on a computer, it's awkward because the seat in front of you is far. So it's not, you get extra legroom, but again, unless you're 7'2", you can't really benefit from it that much.
I don't know when the last time I used the tray was. The tray is not even...
Do you not eat?
No, I don't use the tray. Generally I don't eat. I pack like granola bars and stuff and different snacks. Or I'll just starve and I'll eat in the airport and starve during the flight. But no, I don't have a full meal where I'm buckling out and getting the knife and fork out in situation. I don't try, the longest flights I ever get on are 5 hours, right? 4.5, 5 hours. So that's it. And they don't do the thing where they used to when you were a kid where it was like, all right, you're going to get cordon bleu for free. I was like, no, that's not going down anymore. Airlines have cut that out. You pay for everything. I don't pay for a thing on the plane. Anything that costs $1 on an airplane, it's the dead last thing I'll ever pay for. I'm like, I've already paid such a premium just to be on here, use your travel, and I'm grateful for that.
So you pay a premium to go to Sbarro's or wherever you're going in the terminal?
Yep. But on the plane, for whatever reason, it's completely different. I actually felt like a sucker on my last trip because we landed in Chicago and I bought the airport deep dish pizza. I'm like, look at me. I'm like in Chicago. I'm like a resident here. Eating the deep dish. I know it's not, but I still trick myself into it. All right. On to the hoops. The Raps. Let me start by asking you this question. Do you think that the Raptors beating the Lakers or the Raptors beating the Sixers was the most exciting game of the season so far?
Sixers.
Same. Yeah. Why?
This was a playoff atmosphere.
Yeah, it was.
It was virtually a playoff game.
Yeah.
And Fred VanVleet said it to our radio broadcast crew. Their antennas were up. They were geeked up for it. Like they were ready to play. The Lakers game was nice. But I actually think they played better the next night against the Clippers, just in a loss. The Sixers game was a blueprint into what this team could be at the highest of levels and what they're going to need to do if they are going to make a run throughout the East. So, no, I certainly think that the Sixers game was more of a facsimile of playoff basketball.
I think I underestimated what that game meant for the Raptors. Like, I looked at it through the lens of the Sixers and the disappointment because that was the natural angle, right? Wow, you were a rim bounce away from potentially getting an overtime and going to an Eastern Conference Finals, and then who knows what, right? Joel Embiid has talked about it. All these guys, they've been distraught. I had Michael Lee on Good Show the other day. He said that he tried to talk to J.J. Redick before the season opener because the Pelicans were here in Toronto. And he said J.J. Redick couldn't even talk about it with him. He just couldn't. It still stung him so badly that he didn't like being reminded that he was starting his season in the same place where his last season ended. That crushed those guys. I think it partly broke up those guys. And we'll talk about that a bit in a sec. But the Raptors also had a lot of different narratives in that Philly series that we kind of bury and we kind of forget because they were so successful against Milwaukee and they were so successful against the Golden State Warriors. And I think that those guys felt more of an urge to show out than I had originally anticipated going into that game. And it was fun. And I've been talking about this with people. To me, this Raptors regular season is more entertaining than the last one.
Because?
There's a couple of reasons. It was really fun getting Kawhi and the media conference, and having Kawhi was great. This isn't to diminish the Kawhi Leonard regular season. It's not. It's just that this is how fun this season is. Every night just feels like a party. It feels like a celebration amongst Raptors fans. I mentioned that there was like the victory lap tour that was going to happen earlier in the podcast, but the team is, I think, way more competitive than everybody realized. The East is way more open than people realize. Siakam is better than I think we expected. VanVleet is better than we expected. Nick Nurse might be one of the best 5 coaches in the NBA. They've proven that they can do this type of winning without Kyle Lowry, without Serge Ibaka, without Matt Thomas, without Dewan Hernandez. Who else are they missing? It feels like they're missing half the team. But anyways, they're doing it without these pieces.
McCaw.
Yeah. There's an ownership level to this group of the nostalgia of last year, the belief that they can win these games, the belief that they can be clutch, that they can play in these type of games where the stakes feel a little bit higher. That's different. And also there's no more anxiety of the will he, won't he Kawhi Leonard discussion. Like every time it got cold talking about, does Kawhi judge us on this? How does Kawhi feel about when we lose to the Spurs in San Antonio? All that stuff is kind of gone. It's just everything is fun. I couldn't go to sleep. We're taping this on a Tuesday. I couldn't go to sleep on Monday night because I was just so jacked up after that Sixers game. It was so exciting, and I don't remember feeling that way from the regular season wins last year. This is kind of a new feeling that it's closer to the playoffs.
So, in terms of comparing it to last year, when do you think Usain Bolt's parents were more excited? When he took his first steps or when he won his first gold medal?
Gold.
In record time. Gold?
Yeah.
I disagree.
First steps, they were like, we knew you were going to do that eventually. Like, we're fired up, but we knew you were going to do it. But Gold, they're like, we have the son who's fastest ever? Whoa.
No, but I think they also knew he was going to do that. Yeah. Because they saw him in the prelims, they saw him at the World Championships.
You're such a dad now. You're excited about first steps. You say Einstein when you insult people. Like, this is a new dad look for you.
Dad say Einstein?
I think so. I think, hey, listen up, Einstein. That's a dad thing to say. Yeah.
I do think that seeing the Raptors in their embryonic stages, building towards, potentially another championship, seeing Pascal take another leap, and I would argue that the leap he's taking now is harder than the one he took last year. Seeing OG take some steps, seeing Norm take some steps, seeing Terrence Davis is not even taking steps right now. He's triple jumping at this point. He's been so good.
This is ridiculous what we're seeing from Terrence Davis.
It is. I think that's why it's more exciting, because you weren't sure what you were going to get, and so all of this is house money.
No, it's amazing. It's been so unbelievably fun, and I've been getting as many texts from people during games as during the playoff run last year. It feels like I think you and I didn't actually have an opportunity to do this podcast, or we didn't include it in a podcast, but we talked about it a little bit on air. You had a question of, what was the fan base going to look like this year? Yeah, you had floated that and said, what's it going to look like after a championship season, but then they lose Kawhi? Is it going to be, how are they going to capitalize on this momentum? What's it going to look like? And I wonder if we looked at retention of new fans from this team and from last year, because the Raptors have some of the best fans in the NBA, and that's not been a secret in this city for a really long time. But I would assume that if we looked at the retention rates of new fans, it's through the roof. Like, who's left this team? Who's looking at this Raptors team now like, call me when they get Kawhi back? Like, no, I can't imagine that's a very large population.
Yeah, there certainly would have been bandwagon jumpers for the championship run, and people who will start to pay attention again when they're in the playoffs again. But I do think that the fan base grew. I mean, you just look at the numbers over the summer. During our first episode of the chat room, we talked about it. In the offseason, when they're going head-to-head with the Jays in season, their Twitter following grew, their mentions online grew, and this was not just compared to the other sports teams in Canada at the time. This is compared to what the Raptors did in previous off-seasons. So let's look at the off-seasons. They got Kawhi, a lot of excitement there. They traded DeRozan, they fired Casey, lots of conversation there.
Yeah.
These are the fact that their likes and their interest and their mentions went up for an off season that was pretty quiet, and that those numbers trended right into the fall, leading into the season. That just shows you that, well, the base is bigger. That's why more people are talking about them, because more people are along for the ride.
So speaking of that, you ever see the movie Saw?
I have.
I think this is from Saw. I'm not really sure, but I think he says, "Would you like to play a game?" Is that pretty good? How was that? Is that Saw? Would you like to play a game? Donnovan Bennett, would you like to play a game?
Sure.
What happens if Kawhi Leonard's rim bounces off the rim? The Raptors go to overtime in front of a crestfallen crowd that cannot believe they're back here. And Jimmy Butler and co. steal Game 7 on the road in Toronto. I'd like to play the game of playing out all the different things and how this looks in Toronto if it doesn't go down that way.
So I'd have to agree with the premise that if the shot went in, the Raptors would lose in overtime, because I'm not certain that would be the case. I still think they would be favored to win that game at home and in Game 7.
I don't know how that would feel. I'm just, the question here is like, what happens if they do lose in overtime? Like, taking out the possibility that, of course, they have a chance to win that game in OT. They still have Kawhi Leonard. But that, yeah, man, they were taxed as a team and they had hit some big shots. The Sixers came back. They almost had a chance to win that game in their own outright. Like, what if the Raptors lose? What are the biggest outcomes? Because I think I'll start with this. Kawhi is already gone and it doesn't matter anyways. But we do spend the offseason wondering what would have happened if the Raptors won that game. Whether or not it was always conclusive, but we are haunted by the what if when it comes to Kawhi Leonard. Like, I think that's public enemy number one. What if the other guys in the series would have stepped up more, helped Kawhi Leonard, but because they didn't and the Raptors lost, that's the bigger reason why he left, not so much California.
Well, we don't look at Marc Gasol as the Embiid whisperer. That's one thing for certain. We probably are not having the conversation of, is Fred VanVleet the point guard of the Raptors' future, or at the very least, a starter in the NBA.
Well, he never has his big moments. There's no, again, in this reality, in this timeline, we've just removed every significant big Fred shot. We've eliminated the having a daughter.
Well, I think he still has the daughter.
No, I mean like us knowing about it and Father Fred and all of those jokes, those are all gone. And we are only thinking that Fred VanVleet is a choker and that you can't go into the offseason with Fred VanVleet. He's too small. And we're back to he has to bet on himself. So when he comes into this season and he's playing this way, there's a level of what's really happening here. Do we really trust this? Instead of, oh my God, this is an extenuation of what he was doing in the finals.
Well, and I don't know if the sponsorship money for Fred is there.
Well, I mean, that's number one.
I don't know if American Express
guys...
is walking through that door. I don't know if Jif Peanut Butter is walking through that door. Roots is walking through that door with a tough boot for him to wear.
I think it's a given everybody's a little bit poorer.
This is Fred VanVleet in a 7-game series versus Philly. 118 minutes, played a lot. Mm-hmm. 14 points.
Yeah.
3 of 24 shooting, 1 of 14 from 3. Mm-hmm. That's how he would have gone into the offseason. This was Fred VanVleet on Monday night against Philadelphia. 24 points, 9 of 15 shooting, 3 of 6 from 3 in 38 minutes.
So I think the two biggest narrative losers from that series would have been Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam. Fred was abysmal in that series. He was unplayable. I came on here and I said that they should explore playing Jeremy Lin because you couldn't play Fred VanVleet anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, he was a liability for you. He could not score. He had the yips of all yips. And we would have all gone into this offseason with, well, like, do you explore trading Fred VanVleet? He's only got 1 year left. Or do you run it back in the offseason? But you certainly need to get some type of a backup point guard. We're not talking about Fred VanVleet starting for this team. Like, all those things happen because of the way Fred VanVleet looked as a starter in the series against Golden State. Him in the second half of ball game shutting down Steph Curry.
We don't have box and one.
If that
doesn't happen.
Exactly. So, obviously, the Fred one is just clear. There's no question about it. But the one I kept thinking about was Siakam. Because the Siakam narrative in that series was he couldn't score on Embiid. They took away the basket from him, and all of a sudden Kawhi didn't really have a number 2. And was his number 2 legitimate? Like, really, the number 2 in that series ended up being Serge Ibaka. And, like, Gasol's defense against Embiid, because finally Nick Nurse started matching the minutes. That's the other thing. Nick Nurse is getting hammered way more because people are saying, well, you started doing the Embiid strategy too late, and it already cost us early in the series, and that's why we're here. And how good is Nick Nurse?
Nick Nurse was my answer.
Yeah. Biggest would have been the biggest loser?
Yeah. I mean, listen, we see him as Coach Canada. Leaves the Raptors to finals, immediately goes and coaches Canada. Get him some fisherman friends.
Is he the coach of Team Canada without it?
And build, I mean, probably yes. But, okay. But I think people aren't as excited about it.
Yeah. He's not on stage with the Arkells, I'll tell you that.
He's not on stage with the Arkells. So
Max isn't like, hey, get up here with us, I think, loser coach.
I mean, we talk about people who had a difficult run to the playoffs. Let's look at Nick Nurse's coaches run. Mm-hmm. Look at the coaches he had to go head to head with. Outcoached Steve Kerr. Outcoached Coach Bud, who was a front runner for the job before
first choice.
Nick Nurse got it. Former Coach of the Year guy. He wasn't outcoaching Brown until he did, and ended up winning the series. And you know, in the first round, Clifford is someone among coaching circles who people really, really hold in high regard. That is a gauntlet right there that Nick Nurse went through in his first year as a head coach in the playoffs. So I think, to me, the biggest person in terms of their legacy, it changes is Nurse. And then the other person, and it's crazy that we've gone however long without mentioning his name, is Masai Ujiri. Masai Ujiri put all the chips in the middle of the table to get Kawhi Leonard.
But don't you think he'd be vindicated by some degree because Kawhi was so good in the series that everyone would have looked at it and said, well, he went out and got the right guy. It was just that the rest of the people were too flawed from the other franchises that had not been able to get it done.
If they lose in the second round, is Washington calling? Are the Knicks interested again? Like
that's a good point.
Is the HBO Real Sports series happening?
Does he get to have an NBA Finals where he holds court and talks about how special Toronto is and doubles down on how connected he feels to this place?
I think there would be, maybe not immediately, but when Kawhi eventually left there would have been a segment of the population that said, what was the point?
Yeah.
You got to the exact same point that you normally get, the second round, and it goes 7, and you just saw, the best player the franchise ever had walk through the door without nothing. We could have done that, and we could have had DeMar with the loyalty tattoo. So I think it's those guys, to me, are the ones whose perception changes the most.
The thing that I keep thinking of is Siakam would have been a scapegoat. He trips Joel Embiid in that game. He hurts his calf. He doesn't look right for the majority of the series. He did not look like a legitimate number 2. The contributions you got from him were almost like, oh, wow, you're getting stuff from Siakam now. It wasn't, he's taking over. Siakam needed games later in the postseason to assert himself again and show those moments of brilliance, most specifically Game 1 against the Golden State Warriors. I think we're looking at him and saying, man, what happened? What happened to Siakam? Is he for real? And then when he would have come back this season and we would have seen the progression from Siakam, I think it would have been the same. Like, maybe that impacted him in a way where it propelled him to learn more from Kawhi, but I just think Siakam's that dude who's constantly working on his game. Like, I was thinking about this too, is like, if you're a Sixers fan and you see Pascal Siakam, how annoying is he to you when you have Ben Simmons? Like, Ben Simmons is the guy with all the talent in the world that went first overall, and his game has never taken a step forward. Like, where's the three-point shot we were hearing all about?
He hit one.
He hit one, okay? One. Pascal Siakam every offseason has gone from like the 27th pick, the New Mexico State guy that wasn't anybody, to you would absolutely 100% unequivocally take him ahead of Ben Simmons. Like, if the Sixers called Masai Ujiri tomorrow and said, we'd like to offer Ben Simmons for Pascal Siakam, you're like, thanks, but no thanks. What else were you thinking here? Because is this it? You didn't call me to waste my time with this conversation, right? Like, there's more to this than that, right? Siakam is just that guy. He works on his game in the offseason. It's part of his identity. This has been part of his track record before that. We're looking at Siakam's season this year as an, oh my God, where did this come from? But also with way more of a skepticism to it all. Like, it would feel a lot more like how this Raptor season feels fun, like it's the victory lap tour. This would continue to be the skepticism tour of the Raptors of years past, where we're just looking at this regular season and saying, sure, Pascal Siakam looks great right now. We're excited about it. Wow, a three-point shot all of a sudden. Call me during the playoffs. Oh, Fred VanVleet looks like this? Great. That's awesome. Good progression from him. Call me during the playoffs. I think the guy who's winning the biggest narrative award is OG Anunoby, because he misses the series, and then he's showing up looking like this good, and people are playing the what-if game that the Warriors had to play all offseason, which is, what if this guy was healthy? What if the team that had nobody contributing to them would have had this version of OG Anunoby hitting some threes and playing defense on Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons? How big of a difference would that have made? And it would have tortured people. It would have been, would Kawhi have stayed if we won that series, and what would have happened if OG was there?
I don't think people appreciate how difficult it is to make the improvements in game that Pascal Siakam is making. Because everyone works on their game in the summer.
It's incredible.
And everyone tries new things when they're playing pickup and nobody cares and nobody's really playing defense. But to have enough confidence to institute that in your game in moments, and he's doing it in high leverage moments, it's crazy. Pascal Siakam once missed 27 consecutive three-pointers over a 15-game span, which is basically a month in the NBA. That was just 2 years ago. Now he's shooting just under 40% from three. Lots of people work on their game. DeMar DeRozan, there are legendary stories about how hard he put in work, how he had the keys to BioSteel, and he would be in there at all hours of the night. It took him so long to feel comfortable to shoot threes. He basically had to be begged by their staff to shoot them more. And he goes to San Antonio, and in high leverage moments now, you regress to what you're comfortable with, and your muscle memory takes over, and you don't do those things. And now he's not shooting the three ball at all and not shooting it very well. The fact that Siakam not only was able to add it into his game, but has been able to add the improvements that he's worked on in real games and this quickly, I don't think people understand how difficult that actually is.
Well, yeah, it's super difficult because, again, look at Ben Simmons. He has not been able to do it. He's a guy with all the talent in the world, has not been able to get over that hurdle. And I don't know if this feels like too dark of a podcast for people. Like, why are you even doing this? It's just like, I think it's just an appreciation of how great things were and how bad it could have been had it not happened. Like, we're not talking about, like, I don't look back on, I don't know if I would look back on some failures and some losses of like how devastating or how much they change things. Like, for example, the Leafs lose that horrible game to the Bruins, right? In Game 7, where they blow the 4-1 lead. Yeah, but it ends up turning into a completely different generation of younger players and a bigger upswing than the franchise has ever seen in terms of buy-in from their fan base in a really long time. Like, I just don't think that happens for the Raptors. They don't have the credibility of the organization. Like, it's not the same.
No, the Raptors have had their moments.
They've had their no.
Vince's shot against Philly. DeRozan and Valanciunas at the rim at the end of regulation in Game 1 against the Cavs when you outplayed them. Like, I think there are some moments where if a bucket goes down, the butterfly effect afterwards changes the trajectory of the franchise.
But this one is a butterfly effect where they actually would have won an NBA title because we know it ended up happening. Like those other teams, do you think Vince's Raptors win the championship?
No, but I think them getting to the finals and playing a historically great Lakers team would change the way we look at Vince and we look at that era.
Oh man, yeah. Vince's legacy is like completely different if he has a finals appearance against the Lakers. And like he goes mano a mano and
he goes mano a mano with Kobe in the finals.
And I still view those as Shaq's teams.
But they'd be guarding each other. Like part of Iverson's legacy is Game 1, they steal it. He steps over Ty Lue. Like,
we're probably looking at Antonio Davis a lot differently because he's like, he got eaten alive by Shaq. And we're like, oh God, so embarrassing for him. Like you forget how great Shaq was against the Dikembe in that series and just how badly he eviscerated him from the face of the earth and like basically ended his career. Probably would have happened to AD too. So anyway, I just think it's unbelievable how big the implications of this were. Like, you know it as a fan in terms of how you felt about it and what those memories mean to you. But from the state of the franchise, it's just, who knows if Kyle, Mark, Serge, or any three of those guys are back. I think they're all on the table. I think that it's very much on a possibility that the Raptors go full rebuild and they just decide to go like, we're going Siakam, we're going OG, maybe Fred VanVleet. And we look at Norm Powell's contract as one of the worst. The Norm Powell contract is just hanging over people. They're looking at it and saying, what a failure of Masai Ujiri's that they couldn't even get this guy into the series and have him make an impact, and he's still got a couple of years left. They're trying to dump it. Are they as attractive to a guy like Rondae Hollis Jefferson? Does he look at this and say, I'll take $2.5 million to come here? Like, I'll jump on board. I'll do this. Like, I think that there's a real potential. The Raptors were looking at wholesale. Everyone's gone. Everything must go. We already tried it with the coach. We already tried it with the best player. Now they got to deroot the entire organization. Now everything has to change.
But you can even take the what ifs farther. What if Zaza Pachulia doesn't put his foot under Kawhi Leonard a couple years before?
I know. Oh, sure.
What if
but this is
Manu
this
Ginobili and Tony Parker don't
we can
trash
what if everything.
Kawhi Leonard in the media?
What if we didn't make it to the studio today to do this podcast? Does anyone ever even talk about it? It's an interesting what if for me. It's like, I always loved that chapter of Bill Simmons' book of basketball where it was like, hey, what if this happened? I think this is the Raptors' greatest what if. It used to be what if Vince's shot dropped, you're right, because it would have propelled them to those heights. Now it's, what if that Raptors ball doesn't bounce in the net and they lose an OT? It's the biggest franchise what if ever.
Well, for that very reason, and there'll be an article on Sportsnet.ca at the quarter pole, just breaking down from some Sportsnet basketball contributors, what should the Raptors do at the deadline, for example, is one of the questions.
Yeah.
For that very reason, I think the Raptors' outlook has changed from sellers to standing pat to potentially some window shoppers. I'm not going to the mall to buy, but I'm checking it out, and I'm willing to tap on something. I got my credit card in my right hand because we've seen it with Portland, who said, all right, we're desperate. Let's go Melo. I think the way the league is and how wide open it is, you have more teams that are willing to exhaust all efforts in the chance that this year could be your what-if year. Mm-hmm. And I think the Raptors, both with and more importantly without Kyle and Serge in the lineup, have shown that their ceiling is high enough that maybe at the deadline, if there's a disgruntled star that wants to make a move, or more realistically, if there is a veteran who brings some defensive presence that they could be interested in, the Raptors would be willing to take on some salary and part with maybe a young piece because of that very what-if scenario. You never know when your year could be up, and you have to be ready. Because there's some people who said, well, we just got to wait out the Warriors. What's the point in trying to make our team good right now? Because the Warriors are going to win the next championships until that team's broken up. Masai said, no, I'm going to shoot my shot, and obviously it worked.
I'm going to save my thoughts on this until closer to the deadline. I think they're fluid, but I feel pretty strongly about how this is going to work. And I also, unless I missed the deadline to send in my take on this, maybe that's a good thing if I forgot to contribute as a person to contribute, I guess. I think they missed me on the 25, the Raptors 25th anniversary, top 25 Raptors. Now people feel bad and I'm getting these emails now. Hey, sorry. Guess you felt slighted. Guess you felt on the outside. Here you go. Here's some pity crumbs. You can say what the Raptors should do at the deadline. My last...
is that a humble complaint? Is that what that is? Like not a humble brag, but a humble complaint?
I don't know what it was. It was just, to me, it's just a normal complaint. I complain a lot. I just... Almost like that's exactly what it was. All right. I guess it was a humble complaint. All right. Maybe I've patented something. Before we take this break, because I want to talk about the proposed rule changes. I think it's big news from Woj and Zach Lowe. Do you think if the Raptors don't hit that, if Kawhi doesn't hit that bucket and the Raptors lose that series, that Canada basketball is hosting that tournament in Victoria, the last chance tournament FIBA qualifier to make it to the Olympics this summer?
If Kawhi doesn't make his shot, is Canada hosting?
Yeah. Do they sink the money in for Canada basketball to host? Because it costs money, right? Like that's the impediment to this thing. You got to sink in some dough to host it. And home court is a real advantage here. And now Canada basketball, all the guys have to show up essentially. Guys are already saying they're going to, like Dylan Brooks has said, I'm going to be there come hell or high water. It's in their backyard. What? Dwight Powell said it?
He has. I don't see them being linked whatsoever.
Okay.
I think that,
so I asked.
Any international sporting outfit, you have cycles. Normally they go in 4 and 8 year cycles. Then you do a diagnostic evaluation. We're coming up to the end of the cycle for Canada basketball right now. And if they haven't produced an Olympic berth, questions are going to be asked. So I totally think that we'd be hosting this tournament. I think that us hosting this tournament has everything to do with what happened in basketball in this country after the NBA Finals, not before. I think it had to do with what happened and the fact that we didn't qualify. We didn't really come close, and we didn't have our best on the court.
I think that's correct. I think that logically that makes the most sense. I'll just say this. I think it made it a lot easier to sink that money in knowing you have the attention of the country, or you just had the attention of the country when it came to basketball, and that there was probably more outcry about the players not being there this time around because everyone was still hungry for more competitive basketball and wanted to see the impact of what the Raptors did on the program. Would you agree with that? Like, you think it's as big a story that those guys didn't show up for the qualifier if the Raptors lose?
Yes, but okay. I think it's
irrelevant.
I think the outcry was just people on Twitter who were upset.
Oh, I wasn't just on Twitter. I was in front of a microphone. I was furious about it. And I was talking to Carl English. She was pretty furious about it. By the way, he has a book coming out this Friday. Go check that out. Blake Murphy wrote it.
No, I'm talking about more people who are saying, why isn't X player playing? Why isn't X player playing? And my response would be, why did you just realize that this tournament was happening right now? Like, ultimately...
Yeah, because the Raptors.
No, the point is that they don't care about Canada basketball until they're told. People reacted to the headline of X player not showing up, and that's the first time they realized that the tournament was happening. You're obviously not that person because you're invested in the sport. Mm-hmm. People who cover it are not that person, but all of the people who are saying, "Oh, this is a travesty." Really? How many games did you watch last summer?
You're fiery today. I'm normally the fiery one who's upset about things. You seem like, you got a bee in your bonnet over that middle seat still. Maybe it's sticking with you a little bit. Maybe it was a little chillier than you thought it was going to be. Did you get to wear pants at the Grey Cup?
I did wear pants.
You wore pants? You didn't show solidarity?
Pants.
The guy went with gray camo pants. Huh? What was it? 17 years of no pants and gray camos. That's what he's busted out.
He's wearing some Nike Monarchs as well, which I respect.
Yes.
That guy's ridiculous.
The 17-year pant guy?
Yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, who doesn't wear pants for 17 years over a CFL team? I'm sorry, it's not a balanced person. 18 years.
God forbid. I hope it wasn't the case.
You're freezing cold in Winnipeg over this.
Well, I mean, if you have to plug your car in for it to work, it's cold climate.
Yeah.
God forbid. I hope in the 18 years he hasn't had to go to a funeral. Mm-hmm. Maybe he had to, go to a wedding. But there are just scenarios in life where you need to put pants on.
Yeah.
Those two things would be one. And the excuse of, well, I'm just riding it out until the Bombers hoist the Grey Cup is not one that would play.
Yeah. Could you imagine you wore shorts 2 days in a row I'd be like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, it's because I want the Argos to win a Grey Cup. And then you're in our boss's office. They're like, here's the thing, Donnovan. You got to put some pants on, sir. Like, you can't come back to work if this is a decision that you're making. It's either your job or the pants.
Well, there are
I don't want
always
to crush this guy, but
people, and aside from this guy, I mean, he was doing it for some sort of cause. There are the people who, you know, you see them, they're wearing shorts in the winter, like mid-November, early December.
It's that guy wearing a T-shirt the other day.
And it's just like,
it's 5 degrees.
What are you trying to prove?
No, I don't know.
What are you trying to prove?
You're not NFL quarterback. Like, this isn't Colin Kaepernick playing with no sleeves in Green Bay. Like, I don't know what you're doing here. Like, just put a jacket on. SN Raptors newsletter. We talk about it every week. That's because we really believe that you should subscribe to it. If you haven't already, it's new this year. It's a weekly newsletter from our NBA editor, Stephen Lung. It's original content, opinion, analysis. You can't find it anywhere else. So just go to sportsnet.ca/newsletters, and you can subscribe. So I think it was Friday night. Yeah, Friday night, I'm out with some friends, and Kemba Walker gets hurt. He hurts his neck. I'm really worried for him because I see him taken on a stretcher. I didn't see the play, and prayers up for Kemba. But there's all this, Wojnarowski's dropping in, and that makes me like kind of terrified because I want to, like, why is Wojnarowski talking? I don't have any volume on the bar in the TV, or the TV on in the bar, but I see him out there, and it's like, they brought in Woj to talk about the Kemba injury. This has to be bad. So I look at my phone, I'm scrolling through my phone to see what's happening here, and it's not Kemba related. Adrian Wojnarowski is on your television set or on your Twitter feed because the NBA is putting together a pretty bold package that includes a bunch of major changes. They include an in-season tournament, similar to, again, second Bill Simmons reference to this podcast, but his initial idea of the Fun as Hell tournament, which was a play-in to keep teams from tanking so they could eventually get some playoff revenue. So an in-season tournament that the best way it's been related to me is what they do in European soccer models, that they'll have different cups and they'll play for them. Is this right? I'm not a soccer guy.
FA Cup, Caribou Cup, Carling Cup.
All right, yeah. You were the
Champs League.
Yeah, you should have set up that part. Almost, I don't even know. I can feel his like eyes burning into the back of my skull for my just disgust for not knowing anything about soccer tournaments. So they have this in-season tournament idea where it's 30 team participants with a group stage, pre-knockout rounds, all this different stuff, 6 division winners. I don't even want to go through it. It's a tournament for a separate championship, essentially, that would have extended in mid-December. There's also the idea of postseason play-in games. So 2 4-team tournaments, including the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th seeds in the conference. The 7th seed would host the 8th seed, and the 9th seed would host the 10th seed, and the winner of that game facing the loser in a 7-8 matchup for the final spot, all right? And then what would coincide with this is the NBA giving up 4 games of the regular season to turn it into a 7-8 game season.
You missed one.
What did I miss?
Reseeding.
Reseeding. Right, reseeding is my least favorite of... Actually, they're all my least favorite.
Technically, they can't all be your least favorite.
They're all tied for least favorite. It's like I can't be more disappointed in any of these ideas than I am. Actually, 78 games is my most favorite of all my least favorites. But yeah, I'll explain why I feel that way. I'll start with you. We haven't talked about this. What was your initial reaction to this? Was it up and down? Have you gone back and forth on this? Has it stayed the same? Like, how do you feel about these proposals?
So these are things that Adam Silver has talked about, has floated for a while. To understand these, I think you have to understand Adam Silver at his core. Adam Silver is not just a lawyer. He's a finance guy. He's thinking about money. He's thinking about revenue and how you grow the pie. And so these are things that would never even come close to reality in David Stern, who was more about protecting the shield and the legacy of the sport.
He grew the game internationally in a way that no commissioner has. Made quite a bit of dineros for the league.
True. That's true.
He also sold my Sonics off to go to Oklahoma City for a silver dollar.
True.
Sorry.
So Silver has done very strategic things that people would be upset at, that they make more revenue, they grow the pie for everybody. When he floated the idea of ads on jerseys, first move he did was he took the NBA logo and put it on the back of the jersey to create space for an ad. People were outraged. Now nobody cares. Shout out to Sun Life. You're getting
this
your Raptors
is bigger
money.
Than that.
The point is, it's new money.
Yeah.
Right? So, like any business, you need to continue to grow, to continue to help your investors. You can't stay flat. And so, and he's looking at the landscape, the bubble in terms of what he could get for TV money that's probably close to the max. It probably is going to come down a little bit in the future. We'll see. But it's tough to be able to find a way to grow that even more, to get more money out of ESPN and TNT and us and TSN. And depending on what Daryl Morey may or may not tweet, might be more difficult to get money from people who don't live in North America. But just the fact that the money is so fragile in terms of media lets you know that you need to find some other revenue streams.
But are we concerned about that as a fan? Like, if I'm a fan of the team, do I care if the multimillionaire makes a little bit less or to have the product? Like, ultimately, what this is really about is sustained growth, right?
You do care about it as a fan, and here's why. Because right now, the business model is to find a way to get your team in the playoffs to win a championship, and that's how you're relevant. Mm-hmm. And either, if you can't do that, you tank and you suck because the draft incentivizes that. And so now you have regular season games for teams for entire years that don't matter. Mm-hmm. Or if you are going for that championship, well, these regular season games don't matter because if I'm really good, the playoff games really, really matter, and that's going to change things. So, thus, we have this thing called load management. So can we build other things into our season that make games matter, that people feel like they're winners, even if they don't win the Larry O'Brien, because only one team can, and can incentivize teams to play their guys more often? And I think that's what he's doing. Can I give the media partners another thing to sell? Can I literally put a sponsorship on this? The Canadian Championships in the MLS soccer is the Nutrilite Cup. Like, can we sell this to a sponsor? Can we sell revenue and ad streams just to these games? Maybe Amazon. You're not an NBA partner, but those wildcard games, we'll give them to you. Just the same way the NFL created a Thursday night package. These are things that Adam Silver is looking at and exploring at. And so that's why it doesn't just impact the business. It would eventually impact the fan. Because right now we have a crisis where a bunch of games for a lot of teams don't matter.
So I asked you a question. I think it was the first question of the entire podcast that was actually basketball related. It was, what are the two most exciting Raptors games of the year? And they were the Sixers game and the Lakers game.
Okay.
Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka were absent from those games. And it's a discussion point, but
they're absent because they were hurt.
I know. But what I'm saying is that ultimately, I think this is an issue of how we cover the league and the discussions that we have about the league more than it actually should be a revenue generator. It's the way that we treat our perception of the regular season from a media and a fan standpoint for the last couple of years that's built up to this moment. Like, I get what you're saying. I know Adam Silver wants to make more money.
So you're saying we should cover the regular season as if it matters more? Is that what you're saying?
I think that the regular season is fine. I think the product is fine. I think that the NBA is actually doing itself a disservice by putting this flag in the air saying, there's problems, we're thinking about doing this. Like, these are drastic measures. Like, an in-season tournament it's not done in North American sports because it doesn't work in North American sports. Like, we aren't accustomed to that as fans.
But there are fans going to games with signs saying, this is little Johnny's one chance to see LeBron and he's not playing.
But that's
a real thing.
I know it's a real thing.
Dumb, but it's a real thing.
But I don't think that gets mitigated by a 78-game schedule. Like, that's 4 less games plus an in-season tournament. Like, what are we talking about here? There's got to be more games all of a sudden.
But would 4 or less games really change your life?
No, that part to me, that's why I said it's my least significant one. I'm like, okay, good, get rid of 4 games. If that actually means some buy-in from some players to take less load management. I don't think load management is as big of a problem as people make it out to be. Like, I think that...
You don't want to run a TV network.
I get that, and that's the conversations that these guys are having, and that's why they're supposed to try to take these precautions of, like, how hurt is a guy, and that's why... Have you heard Jalen Rose's solution for this? He says that if you finish the game before... you should be able to play the next game, or else your stats count all for zeros. And he says that will affect guys. And to me, that's the creative solution making we need.
Kyle Lowry finished the game with a thumb and then was out for however long.
And that's why it's not perfect. We need more brainstorming. I'm just saying that anyways. Jalen Rose is at least thinking in the creative way that I want people to be thinking of, which is, how do we improve this in-season product? How do we get more buy-in from these guys? Because it was supposed to be the money, and apparently, like, that doesn't qualify to be enough these days.
It's not the guys. The teams are saying you are resting because it's not just better for you. It's better for us.
LeBron James is probably being told by his sports science department, like, hey, man, you should rest the next couple games. And he's like, no, I'm going to play till the wheels fall off. Like, it's not a universal problem across the NBA.
Because it didn't make sense.
But he did. He played until the season was done, and then he shut it down. down because the season was absolutely over and he's a little beat up. He'd played 1 billion playoff games. Nobody was going to fault him for that. I'm saying that.
But if he could have played for the Milk to Go Cup at the end of the year,
no, I don't.
Maybe he would have played.
That's what I'm saying. The Milk to Go Cup can. Milk to Go Cup. Is Milk to Go a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Milk to Go?
Yeah.
All right. I mean, check that out. Kids love it. I guess you have 2 young nephews and nieces I see in your Instagram stories, and they love Milk to Go. All right. So they go to the Milk to Go Cup, and they think it's all of a sudden important. Now, I don't believe it.
Or if the Lakers maybe could have made the playoffs because of this interesting wild card postseason play-in game scenario, maybe he would have played more games.
How many times?
That is a real thing.
You know,
the
LeBron
team
James,
who's 9th or 10th, or maybe you're 11th or 12th, and you can get to 9 and 10 and then get into the postseason play-in.
a team with LeBron James would have been the first time in NBA history where a 10 seed was relevant or anybody cared about them being in a playoff
But
series.
we would be talking about, oh my goodness, man, if LeBron sneaks in with a 10 seed and wins 2 games to get into the postseason, then he's playing the Warriors in round 1. That would have been a talking point. But instead, we had LeBron drinking wine on the sidelines and nobody talking about the Lakers.
But I'm not. That's the thing. People make mistakes off of a reaction off of one thing. Like, how many times in NBA history has there been a 10 seed or an 8 seed or a 7 seed or like any one of those seeds that's mattered? Never. Like, that's why they still show the highlights of Dikembe Mutombo holding the basketball over his head and reference them beating the Seattle Supersonics as a 1 seed because it does not happen. It is irrelevant.
But they matter in those markets, and the ratings would matter, and people would care.
I don't care.
And ultimately,
I don't want it.
So why don't we just do a Final Four then?
What do you mean?
If the teams who aren't going to win a championship don't matter, why don't we just say top 2 teams in each conference?
Because we need a sample to tell us who does matter throughout the season.
Right, and you're just trying to expand the sample.
No, the sample is fine. It's already 82 games. We have a huge sample for this. I think
were you also upset when they expanded the NCAA tournament?
I thought it was.
No, because you weren't even really paying attention to sports.
For whatever reason,
from 32 to 64.
I actually was thinking about how they expanded World Cup recently, and I was like, you know what? People in World Cup expansion are pissed off about it because now the tournament's too diluted. No, man, this is not that, though. This is unnecessary. That's the thing is in a round of 64, we've seen teams go to the Sweet 16. We've seen teams go deep in the tournament. That thing happens in a one-off playoff game. It doesn't happen in the NBA like this.
But you can't judge it in a vacuum.
I do.
Because
what do you mean?
Because we haven't seen it yet. So for my example,
I don't need to see it.
The trade deadline.
Yeah.
If you're in 12th right now, you're a seller.
Mm-hmm.
If we had this scenario, you might be a buyer because you could get to 10 or 9.
Because you're going to do it for a one-off playoff game?
Well, tell that to the Sacramento Kings fans who are dying for playoff basketball, and Vivek Ranadive, who wants his team in the playoffs.
Do you remember Blue Jays fans when they made it to a wild card game against the Orioles? What the prevailing discussion was? Well, this doesn't count as making it to the playoffs. This is making it to a wild card game.
Do you remember the 5 million viewers? Thank you, Amal, for saying it in my ear. Who watched? Do you remember the parrot running around the bases when Edwin Encarnacion hit a walk-off?
I don't. I think that they are trying to incentivize and make things important that are not nearly that important. Ultimately, to me, the game is fine. I think the way that we've grown to cover the game has become problematic, and that it leads to this. ESPN sunk all of their coverage into Adrian Wojnarowski. They essentially fired their entire staff. They said, Woj, you're the head of this thing. We have become more interested in Woj bombs than league pass alerts. And to a degree, that makes sense, right? Because player movement. But we're so concerned about where players are going to go, we don't really enjoy where the players are in the moment. And I think that if you watch games like Celtics-Clippers, if you watch games like the Clippers-Rockets game the other night on Saturday, if you watched, all those things happened Saturday, by the way, the Wojnarowski thing I'm realizing right now. No, they did happen Friday. Sorry, they happened Friday. If you watch that game on Friday night, you know that's just the thing. If you watch the Raptors and the Sixers, the league is fine. The way that we cover the league is a problem. We cover it where we're always looking for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I think eventually you're going to continue to bleed that dry, and you're going to isolate the people who just love the product for what it is. Basketball is an incredible game. It's my favorite game. I love the connection of the history of the game until now. This league is smart because they do make changes. They are accepting of, hey, you know what? We need to add a three-point line. They do it. They listen to their players better than other leagues. They initiate change that makes sense a lot of the times. They do that. They do it extremely well. And I think Adam Silver is the best commissioner in all of basketball. The problem here is that this is too much change just for the sake of it. It's you basically conceding that your regular season doesn't matter. And now you're diminishing it even further because now all I care about, or I'm told I'm supposed to care about, is the 30-team in-season tourney, that guys that it's going to be millionaires playing for more money. There's no there's no history tied to this. It's going to take decades before something like that actually matters. Look at us in Canada. We threw I can't even remember if it was called the World Cup of Hockey or the World Championship of Hockey. They were like, don't worry, no Olympics this year. We're going to have World Championship of Hockey. Guess who cared when Canada won? Nobody. It was a joke. Everybody looked at that as what a fringe tournament. And people made the example of, well, the juniors tournament started off that way. It's like, yeah, and it took years and years and years and years and years to establish. I don't think that this works. I don't think it works in North American sports. I think it's too foreign. And I don't mean like it's too foreign from Europe. I mean, it's too foreign to fans in general. Like they don't look at this. They don't connect with this thing. Postseason playing games for teams that are of the 7, 8, 9, 10 seed are all completely irrelevant. They're all just playing in a mirror. I don't even think national fans would care. Like, am I going to watch Charlotte play Atlanta in a 10 seed game to see who gets smoked out in the first round by the Milwaukee Bucks? No, I don't care. Leave it. Leave it on the sides. You know what I'll watch over that? Anything. If the girlfriend says I want to watch This Is Us tonight over Atlanta Hawks, Charlotte Hornets, the decision is easy for me. Like, that's a no-brainer.
If Luka Doncic and Buddy Hield were just going off back and forth threes, trying to get into the postseason, you know who would watch? You would.
No.
Because you like basketball.
I mean, Luka Doncic is the 3-seed team that's going to be relevant this year.
I'm talking about last year.
I know. They were irrelevant. I didn't care. They were done. I did not care about that team last year.
This is a chicken and the egg thing. And you're saying that the way that we cover the sport is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to tell you that ESPN didn't just give Woj money because they felt like it, because they were reading the audience and they understood that.
No, they're reading Twitter.
The breaking news and alerts and all of the drama around the sport is what people care about at this moment more than the actual games. Do you want to know how we know? Because less people year in and year out are watching the actual games.
I know, now, this is an attention span issue.
Our market might be different because of the Raptors and the rise, but if we're looking at the sport as a whole, more people are watching highlights on Instagram to follow games, not actually sitting down and watching the entire game. So Adam Silver is looking at the way things are going, and with a generation of younger fans, it's not going to change, and saying to myself, how can I build some things into the regular season so that it matters and people want to watch games? How can we give more things that might be interested in terms of oh my goodness, we have this midseason tournament. I'll bet on that because it matters.
But don't
in
tell
a way
me
that
from
I
Adam
wouldn't
Silver.
bet on game 36 of the regular season. And so do I want this? Do I care? No.
But that's what I'm saying. Do you care? Do you want this as a fan? Is this interesting to you? Like, I get Adam Silver, why he wants to push it. Of course, he wants to make money. Like, I get that. Do you, Donnovan Bennett, see this news and say, I want to see this tournament?
Well, I want the sport to be thriving and alive in 10 and 15 and 20 years.
It's going to survive. It's going to live. Dude, baseball has the average audience of the 65-year-old person. We still cover baseball. We're still going to cover baseball forever. Basketball's not going anywhere. Like, it's here to stay.
Okay, but that's what people said about horse racing and boxing in the 60s and 70s. Things change, and so you need to get ahead of them, which the NBA has done, which is why it's doing well. And so do I think all of these ideas are great? Do I think a 30-team in-season tourney is going to be good? No. Yeah. But do I think reseeding the conference finals is something that might be interesting? Imagine a Lakers-Clippers finals. I think that would be intriguing. Do I think postseason play-in games would matter to those fan bases? Surely it would. And so whether it's the local TV audience or the national TV audience or getting players to play more games or giving us more content to talk about, I do think that there is some merit here. Would I be upset if it didn't happen? No. But do I understand the methodology that they got to this place? 100%.
To me, this is a disconnect from the fan base, not a connection to the fan base. This is a disconnect from what people want, and this is just nothing other than pure unadulterated greed. This is the NBA trying to say, we want more, we need more. It's not about keeping...
greed would be more games.
This is more games, Donnovan.
No. It's capped out at 78, so technically it's not more games. Greed would be going the NBA route and saying...
But that's not including the 30 in-season, the in-season tournament and the postseason playing games.
Yes, it is. My understanding is that it is. That was a concession that in exchange...
I don't see how that would work because then everyone's season could be different based on how you get knocked out. Anyway, that part up to 83 games. Yeah. All right. So they could essentially play a game more than they did in the regular season than last year. So yeah, I don't think that 4 games matters that much. Like that part is the sticking point of like, I don't care about. I'm just saying to me, this is just a money grab. This is not the league trying to stay relevant. They're staying relevant just fine. Like the league has never been more relevant than in my lifetime than it is right now. Like you're right.
You.
No, for young people as well. The game has grown.
So why are the TV audiences down?
Because guess what? Less people are watching TV. More people are streaming these things illegally. More people are getting this thing on NBA League Pass and watching it on their computers. That's what's happening. It's a younger audience, and so you're seeing less people watch it on TV. Like, the NBA is just as popular as ever. Go on Twitter if they want to base it on like their Twitter audience and about Instagram feeds like you're talking about. Yes, I do believe a lot of people are consuming it that way. People have shorter attention spans. They have more at their disposal. Now you have ESPN Plus, Hulu, Netflix, all these different things all at your disposal. It's a more competitive market. I don't think that you're changing the outlook of the sport because you now have an in-season tournament that no one's emotionally invested in. What you want is emotional equity. How do you get emotional equity from fans where they care? I don't think it's with cheap little frills on the side of being like, hey, 10 seed, we're trying to cater to you. You're the attention team for tonight. It just, to me, it's not a thing that matters. They need to focus on how to connect with the fans, continue that they build locally, accept that nationally it's going to be harder and harder to sell different things. Continue to build up your stars, continue to build your online presence, stay cool, stay young, stay the NBA. Watch a basketball game, go to an NBA game.
But those things are not mutually exclusive. You can do that and also reseed the last 4 teams. You can do that and also have a postseason plan.
I just think that all you're doing there is you're isolating older parts of your fan base. You're isolating some of your new fan base that doesn't feel like they need it that way. And
are you isolating them?
Yeah,
You're not gonna watch a 30-season in-season tournament.
I work for Sportsnet. I'm gonna watch everything. They tell me like, hey, you got to watch. You think I want to watch? I'm trying to think of like Davis Cup. Like, no.
But okay, if you're a Raptors fan, you're not gonna watch the 30-team in-season tournament because it's different. You're just gonna, I boycott this.
No,
there's a better chance you're going to watch that than watch game 27 against Charlotte.
I would watch it in the same way that I'm going to be watching the Detroit Lions play whoever on American Thanksgiving. It's there, so I'll watch it.
So you're proving my point that there's no potential negative. There's only a potential positive.
No, there is, because the negative is that you diminish your product all around, that everything now feels less important. Everything else feels inconsequential. Now, all of a sudden, you have a competing championship. Like me as a fan, I'm going to say we won the Milk to Go Cup versus the NBA Finals. Like, which of these things? I don't buy it, man. That's just how I feel.
But what if you do a double?
Yeah,
you won the Milk to Go Cup and the Larry O'Brien.
I mean, technically, you should.
And Drake has 2 rings. He has a pinky ring for the Milk to Go, and he has a big ring for the Larry O'Brien.
You didn't even want to give Drake a ring. Actually, I think you did. You just felt like JV should also have one. All right, one more break, and then how much? What are we at for time?
2 hours.
Just over an hour? Yeah, damn it. Do we have time to do our last block? All right, yeah. Let's take one more quick break. Donovan's going to tell you about his show that I guess he likes more than this show, Chat Room. Go on. Gush about your first love.
It is a chat room. It is catered to all of the NBA fans that not only love to watch the games, but love all of the conversation around the games. Who is wearing what? What sneaker is out that is hot? And should the Raptors make a trade to a beloved point guard? We talk about things like that, not just on Free Association, but on the chat room. It's myself, it's Faisal Kamisa, at times it's Daniel Michel.
Mm-hmm. Watch it. Please watch it. Support it. Watch it. Review it. Subscribe to it. Do all those things. Trying to kind of gather my thoughts here because, so for those of you that are fans and those of you who follow us and blah, 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 you saw that on Twitter, the website here, they put the question forward, should the Raptors trade Kyle Lowry, which is the thing that we talked about on the last podcast. Like, we genuinely believe, well, I mean, this topic was something that I brought to the table where I said, listen, the Raptors are playing well. You all, the associates that listen a long time, you all know what's happening here. This is what we do here. We have conversations. And even though we both concluded that Kyle Lowry should remain a Toronto Raptor and that they should see what's happening, it doesn't matter. There was this incredible amount of vitriol on Twitter, just this unbelievable amount of hate and anger. And I muted my mentions. At first, I started to try to reply to people about it and be rational about it, but like some Raptors bloggers picked it up. Some different people went with it. They were really upset. Some people were upset about different reasons. The Sportsnet staff thing that some of you had issue with, which is that the article that they built off of the thing was not written directly by someone or their name was not attached, is because that's what happens when we build stories off podcasts here. That's not anyone's piece. They're just aggregating some of our content, so they don't put it as an author, they put it as staff. Like, technically, that's free association. These are our things. So, again, we stand behind the things that we say on this podcast. It was a thought experiment about how you develop young players and whether or not Kyle Lowry is good or bad for development long term, how big of a chance this team has at winning. Again, you listen to the podcast, you know what it is. But I just quickly want to talk to you about this because, yeah, man, you're someone who's also seen this stuff happen, and you were like pretty busy. You were a lot more busy this past weekend, so I don't think it was as big on your radar as it was on mine. But the idea of just how quickly people will go to bash something or someone online off of a headline or a story that they don't put any thought into, or just that even all that stuff aside, like even had we come out and said the Raptors should trade Kyle Lowry, we had people, I saw a couple of people tag me in tweets being like, this is the guy who said it. Let's get him. Like, we want mob justice. And I find this, I don't want to be preachy on here, like I don't, but I genuinely find it like a very, very disturbing way that we're moving when it comes to online discourse and the way that like what we enjoy doing on social media platforms.
Yeah, I mean, the feedback that you get in terms of what content does well, it's like, ooh, I want opinion. I don't want you to just broadcast the news. We want to tell you how you really feel, how you experience it yourself. And then you give your opinion and people disagree with it and they get upset. How dare you have that opinion that's different than mine? And so whether it was the scenario that you experienced, and a lot of people complained with the headline, and I mean, I suppose the headline could have been longer and it could have had more context, but I thought the headline was fine. It was a question. Should the Raptors trade Kyle Lowry? Yes or no. There are two options. It wasn't a statement. If you are in the camp who believes no, which when we had the conversation I was, then interact with it and say no or don't and keep scrolling on your phone. But whether it's the fact that we get so quick to the place of, and I think most people don't actually consume the content, they just see the headline. And in fact, there are stats on Twitter that no matter what the article is, the average article that comes out on Twitter, the vast majority of people who retweet it, so that's even someone who's agreeing with it, have never clicked on the link. And so that just shows you in terms of where as a culture. But when you give your opinion, whether it's yourself or whether it's, not even working here, whether it's Jess Allen, who works for Bell, who said in her experience, she experienced hockey bullies, and then people conflated that to mean she said all people who have ever played the sport of hockey are bullies. Like, people just want to be outraged. We live in an outrage culture. And I understand where you're coming from, because on this very subject, a couple years ago, I wrote a piece, 9 reasons why the Raptors should trade Kyle Lowry instead of re-signing him long-term. 9 reasons. I fully fleshed out the many ideas as to why it could be most beneficial. Now, because of circumstance, I had written that piece 2 weeks prior, and it was just set up for a time that it made sense for our website. Eventually, when we published it, which had nothing to do with me, it so happened to be Kyle Lowry's birthday. So a lot of people
timing.
Yes, unfortunate timing. So a lot of people thought I was spiking the football on his birthday and saying he should be traded. But it was more about, not Kyle Lowry, look at point guards who are 6 feet and below, who are 30 plus. There's not many that have aged well. In fact, it's John Stockton, who is a cyborg. And so unless he's going to buck history, this is what you're going to have. Someone who you're paying a lot of money and you're getting diminishing stats from. At the time, Steph Curry was also going to be a free agent. And so the whole point of the article was, if you pay both of these guys the max and one is appreciably better than the other, you now have to be better at every other position on your roster. Kyle Lowry didn't get the max.
Remember the article.
Kyle Lowry didn't get the max. But none of that nuance or context was in the vitriol that I got on Twitter. It was just, how dare you trade the bulldog that I love? That's Kyle Lowry. And so I understand why you felt a certain type of way about the reaction, but I think that is just literally in our industry or in our consumption on social media. That is the way people consume. They're not actually looking for a deep dive and to read. They're just looking to pass the 5 minutes of time that they have to sit and wait in a doctor's office. So they're scrolling. Oh, I see this. I disagree. I'm going to respond real quick and I'm going to keep it moving.
So I will say this too, like news organizations and publications like ours, we also owe a responsibility of due diligence of saying, listen, and this is not just a Sportsnet issue. This is an everywhere issue where I think fans have been frustrated for a while with the idea of clickbait, right? Stories that are trying to incite a reaction from you. And then people say, well, you tried to incite a reaction. You got one. I'm mad. Genuinely, I think people who know us and listen to our podcast know that like that's not really our bag. We're not trying to first take people. This has been pretty much from the jump a discussion podcast where we really do come in here with earnest and heartfelt opinions. And when we do them, they're not sugar-coated or they're not manufactured for something. There's a thing, though, where it goes beyond that to me. Like, I could see people getting a rise. I could see people even being like, get out of here with this, or like this again, or like, what are you doing? Like, blah, blah, blah. The stuff that I think is more weird to me is the wanting to be seen as the one who is trying to harness all of the hate in one place. Like, someone who is essentially... I saw some people like quote tweeting it and being like, look at this, like, let's hate on this together. And that's the thing I don't really understand is like the wanting to be seen by being the leader of a mob and how people are not recognizing that that's the role that they're playing and that's a function they're playing and how destructive that can be. Well, like you and I are real people. Like I read the comments. You write something to me, like I'm going to read it.
Yeah, I don't read it. But
yeah, you're better about that.
People do forget that we're real people.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when you respond back to that person, then they're much less tough and much more understanding. Sometimes they're not.
Sometimes.
But I do think that they see us as these characters who play these positions on their favorite teams or their favorite narratives.
And we're paid to essentially be a hate funnel in some ways.
Yeah. I do think, though, that the sensitivity towards clickbait is a little
extreme.
Heightened. Like that, I don't think that article in that headline is clickbait.
No.
Clickbait technically is David Beckham cheats on Victoria, and then you click on the link, and it's the fact that
watched the show without her.
He cheated. Yes, he watched a Netflix show without her. Or
he said The Crown was for both of them, and then he watched episode 1 without her.
He was counting cards, playing Uno.
Yeah,
like that's clickbait when you're being disingenuous about what the actual content is about. The conversation was about should the Raptors trade Kyle Lowry. Now, could the headline have said, should the Raptors trade Kyle Lowry because Fred VanVleet is so good? Or should the Raptors trade Kyle Lowry and run the offense through Pascal Siakam? But it didn't. And quite frankly, if you have a headline that's long, people are gone. They're not paying attention. So
yeah, I get that people don't have attention spans. We just talked about it with watching the NBA. I think the NBA is a better product than our podcast. No offense to us.
I think the NBA and our podcasts are one and the same. We're both the same product.
I just mean, like, if I'm getting the option of watching the NBA game, the Raptors-Sixers game, or listening to Free Association, I think that most people presented with the two options are going to choose the prior rather than the latter. I think the thing is if you're listening to this, we're being definitely preachy. I know I am more so. But it is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. And I do, for a long time, people looked at Bell and Rogers and said, hey, well, like what you say, if it's positive, is you being a shill. And now weirdly, it's kind of swung in this other direction of if you're critical or if you ask questions about a team. And again, I don't even think this was an incendiary question. Like this is what happens with front offices and teams. They evaluate their roster. They decide the pros and cons of what to do with it moving forward. Like that's sports. This is just regular sports talk that we're doing here. What kind of coverage that you want from things? Like, do you just want cheerleader stuff? Like, do you just want people to say your team is good? Because like I see this stuff with power rankings, and again, people got so mad over ESPN not putting the Raptors in the top 10 over power rankings. They're like, I legitimately saw one person say, F these clowns as a tweet to the ESPN thing. Like that was their rally cry for like being angry. And I looked at that and I was like, why? It's a power rankings like done to incite a little bit of reaction, but maybe someone's just genuine beliefs. They might not be the same as yours, but whatever. It's just why that has to go 0 to 60 and what you really want from your sports coverage. Do you want honest and genuine analysis, even if you disagree with it? Or do you want people just to simply say, we're going to pump the tires of your team and you're going to come here for hearing about how good things are and when it's only positive versus when it's negative. And I feel like it's trending more towards that sometimes, and that worries me because this is just sports. This is entertainment. Like, it shouldn't be that way.
Well, I think it depends on their state and the trajectory of their team in the moment. If their team is not doing well, then they want someone to be in that misery with them. And if you're saying positive things, then you're a shill for the team. And if their team is doing well,
It's weird.
and the trajectory is going up, then if you say anything bad about the team, then you're hating it. And hey, look, newsflash, your favorite player is probably not going to play his entire career with your favorite team.
I think that's one of the issues with the NBA.
Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, that's probably it.
Pascal Siakam's always going to be a Raptor.
Pascal Siakam. Kyle Lowry, this is not his first team, and it would not be the end of the world if it is his last team.
It's not disrespectful.
For very similar reasons. Everyone loves Masai and loves the Kawhi trade now. People were so mad at the time that they had the audacity to trade DeMar DeRozan, I don't know, for one of the top 3 players in the National Basketball Association. So that's just the way people are. Unfortunately, it's too bad, but this is the place that we're at.
Anyways, we thank you, those of you who subscribe to this podcast, who listen to this podcast, who saw some of those tweets and were like, oh my God, this is just a lot. But yeah, it's not going to change anything about who we are. We are a podcast who says it like we see it. And listen, if it rubs you the wrong way, just maybe don't tweet at us about it. Maybe just keep it to yourself or tell a friend. Tell a friend to subscribe, though. Tell a friend to review. Thanks for listening. See you next week.